Hi everyone, it's Shari Carroll for SimonsSaysStamp.com, and I have a card here that I've created using Altenew Wildflower Garden, and I have stamped directly onto pattern paper. I'm working with my Tim Holtz platform, Wildflower Garden stamps from Altenew, and also 49 and Market papers. These are called Vintage Artistry, and there's 36 sheets in total. There's 9 designs. You get 4 of each, and they are double-sided. So I'm using one of the stems to the flowers and my Beanstalk Green Simon Says Stamp ink. So I'll just be inking this up and stamping directly onto the paper. This color of green ink is perfect for these vintage papers because it's a muted tone and it goes well together. Next, I have a scrap piece of paper that I've trimmed down from my panel and I've put it onto my stamp platform, and I'll be stamping the blossom from this piece. And for the blossom, I'm using the Simon Says Stamp Goldilocks ink, and that is another muted tone. So I've placed the stamp onto the platform, and I'll ink this up a little bit, and then I can just stamp this right onto the scrap piece of paper. And using a small set of scissors, I'm trimming around the edges of the flower. For my messages, I am using the Altenew Neighborhood Stamp Set, and I'll be using the Thank You and also For Your Hospitality strip. And using my stamp platform as a guide and lining everything up, I can close the door where I want my message and keep my paper in place. I'll be using the Simon Says Stamp clear ink and inking this up. And before I stamp down, I want to use my anti-static bag real quick so that I don't get excess embossing powder in areas that I don't want. And now I can close the door and press down my image onto my paper. For my embossing, I'm using the Simon Says Stamp Fine Detail Gold embossing powder, and I've just sprinkled that on and tapped off the excess. Now I can heat set this with my heat tool. For my message strip, I'm using the Simon Says Stamp Cobblestone ink, and I've stamped that onto another piece of pattern paper. I'm doing some assembly. I have trimmed down my panel to the size that I want. I've also trimmed down my message strip. And at this point, I'm adding a little bit more interest to the front panel by adding a strip of some pattern paper. I've added some foam dot adhesives to the back of the blossom for the flower, and I'll attach this just at the top of the stem. I have added some foam tape to the back of my message, and I'll remove the backing and place this right onto my card, just below the thank you. I'm adding my panel to a top folding note card, and I have added some foam tape underneath this panel so it'll lift up just a little bit more, and I'll just align this and then press it down in place. I realized that I didn't stamp the center of the flower, so I've placed this onto my block, and I'm using some cobblestone ink, and I'll ink this up and just stamp it right into the center. To add a little more detail to the card, I've cut a really thin strip of the pattern paper, and I'll just add it just at the edge of this darker pattern paper to break up the color. And as one final detail, I'm adding some Nuvo pale gold dots to the center of the flower. Here's a look at my finished card. I really like the natural feel to it all, and I hope I've given you some inspiration on stamping onto some pattern papers. Be sure to check the description box below for the supply list for this card, and as always, thanks so much for watching.